Hello, this is Bernard, and today we'll understand the importance of wire harness design. And this podcast will give you some inputs about why electrical harness design plays an important role. Wire harness is one of the most essential parts of a vehicle industry. Your wiring harness is organized a set of wires, terminals, connectors that run through the entire vehicle and transmit information and electric power, thereby playing a critical role in connecting a variety of components. Power and information travel through this network much like a circulatory or a central nervous system of a human body. It conducts electricity for all the electrical loads on a vehicle. Wire harness contribute tremendously to the manufacturing development, where it advances the vehicle around the world. Automobiles or highway vehicles are driven in all kinds of environment, from cities to mountains to villages, in the tropics as well as in the cold climate. This means the wiring harness must offer superiority durability. Therefore, the main steps in electrical harness design is the selection of the component, the wiring diagram, the wire harness, then the electric routing. That's very important for you to understand. So let's get into that. Selection of a component is so important because selection of a component or the connector, fuse, light, switches, sensors, wires, cables, relay, production tubes, motors, etc. are the core components of wire harnesses. And the performance of these components directly determines the overall performance of the wiring harness and plays a decisive role in stability of safety of the whole vehicle. The basis of the selection of this component is voltage system or the current carrying capacity, and it could be the ambient temperature in the selections of these components, or most important, it's all about the aspects of wire harness design. So proper selection of these electrical components and their conductors ensure reliability of and the safety, right? That's the importance of the selection of a component. So under drastic conditions, the component has to withstand its design aspects. Say for example, you have a requirement on high performance airbags like ABS or ECU with a terminal of connector or gold plated pieces to perform the safety and the reliability of a human's life. So that's very important of selection of the component. We all know wiring diagram is so important because the schematics or the circuit diagram, what we call, is so important for any of the systems to talk in terms of the logical side. So that means the selected components are placed or connected to each other in the diagram, right? What we have done in the earlier step, right? Selection of component has to be represented in the diagram. And these components belong to a set of libraries, standard parts, which can be modified and configured according to the customer need. That means with specific customer expectations. So the wiring diagram shows each connections in detail, the schematics given in an overview of the components that are part of an electrical harness design. That means, say for example, the cables on the sheet cross across the ECUs plays an important role. So that means if an assembly is going to be used for communication or data signal transmissions, twisted paths could be eliminated, or risk of noise is so important because the current trend is all about how can we reduce the noise of a system. So electrical harness plays an important role in performing those assemblies, right? And typically, what is wire harness? The third important factor which you can see is all about the designing of the cable or wire harness of your application. So the wire harness is designed once the schematics are ready. So until the schematics are not ready, that means the logical side is not ready. I'm not going to step into the functional side. So that's very important. So that means the entire vehicle is divided into parts which are detachable, and the wiring harness also designed accordingly, right? The process is also involved generating connection between the bill of material. That's very important because you need to understand the manufacturing capability. The harness passing through many areas where it requires protection against heat, dust, moisture, and nowadays we are more worried about the the noise reductions. So how we can able to do all that stuff? So wire harness protection prevents damage to the cause of vibrations, abrasions, incidental contact, or heat, or sometimes a great impact. So each and every harness has to be designed based on its conditions. So probably the more where the vibrations are more for a vehicle, we need to segregate those areas also into design aspects. That means the thermal management of the tubes, the sleeves, whatever you use, the high temperature resistance under the extreme conditions. These tubes and sleeves are difficult to ignite or something like that. So it's very important that you create the system in certain aspects there where you can able to measure the length, the cable length, and how this length will play an important role in making the things in a right directions, because you have a carburetor looms, you have heat shrink, vinyl tubing systems, and the conduits. All this has to be taken care by placing the system. So very important. Once we move on, then it's very important for me is that how you're going to place my electrical routing system. So the length of our electrical harness in the harness drawing are derived from the 3D model, harness installations, drawing a generated via 3D routing. Routing features creates a unique type of sub-assemblies which builds a path of electrical cables between the components. That means the first stage of component placing plays an important role. It ensures the flexibility between the two or more components and help in deciding the paths, that means the critical paths, and that helps to find out what are the harness length in space. That means digital markup environment plays an important role in the design aspects. This is one sort of things which we need to take it up. So finally, yes, always we talk about the system where we are working in a application side. So it's very important that the software what we use could play an important role, whether it is Zukin or E3 or CATIA, which can play an important role in making the system easy. So wiring harness is currently going through the different phases of advancements, and probably over next 2030 the expectation is electrical harness will be the third major cost of an automotive vehicle. Thanks for listening this podcast from Bernard. Thank you once again.